So sometimes the tools that create firearm parts do not change with each pass, and consecutively manufactured items may have similar marks on them. The following analogy may help to clarify the distinction between them. So if you are looking for your car in a parking lot and you drive a blue four-door sedan, you begin by eliminating any vehicle that is not a blue four-door sedan. So that's like class characteristics because there are many blue four-door sedans on the road. Well, your vehicle had one door that was slightly darker than the others due to a contaminant that was in the paint during manufacture. More than one vehicle was produced with this contaminated paint prior to it being discovered. So that's like subclass characteristics. So in order to find your vehicle, we need to go to the individual characteristics. These would be things particular to your vehicle, like the VIN number, the license plate number, damage to the exterior, or your personal belongings inside the vehicle.
And is this type of identification that you've described generally accepted in the field?
Yes.
What can you test for and what results can you reach if you only have cartridge casings and bullets but no firearm?
So if we only have the fired cartridge cases or the fired bullets, I can determine if they were fired by the same firearm or a different firearm, but not a particular firearm. One other potential limitation you may have when you don't have a firearm is the ability to eliminate subclass potential. So subclass characteristics are directly related to the manufacturing process, so they are predictable. And there are times, in order to eliminate the potential for subclass characteristics, you need the firearm. You need to make a cast of either the barrel or the breech face to determine which manufacturing processes were used and see if you can or cannot eliminate subclass potential.
Slow down just a little bit.
Okay, I'll go slower. There are times, though, where you can eliminate the potential for subclass characteristics without a firearm.
I need you to actually go slow.
Okay. I feel like I'm going slow. Okay, I'm going to try harder.
And did you have an opportunity to review evidence submitted in this case?
Yes.
What types of items did you review?
May I refer to my notes?
Yes.
So in this case, I received 14 fired cartridge cases, a fired jacket fragment, a fired bullet jacket, and 1 lead fragment, and 2 fired bullets.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Ms. Seneschal, I'll show you these exhibits which have been previously introduced into evidence. These are states 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 42, 43, 44, 46, and 75. That should be 12. And I ask you if you recognize those items.
Yes.
And are those the fired cartridge casings that you examined in connection with this case?
Yes.
How are you able to tell that?
So there is the lab barcode with the lab case number, the lab item number, and then I have my initials on it.
And then looking at states exhibits 120, 121, 122, and 123, do you recognize those items?
Yes.
And what are those?
These are the fired bullets or portions of fired bullets.
And are those the ones you examined in this case?
Yes.
I'll take those back from you. And Ms. LaSeneschal, did you prepare a written report summarizing your findings and conclusions in this case?
Yes.
Your Honor, what I've, what I've done for these lab reports is I've put the full lab report on a disk, including all of the underlying data, the chain of custody information, and I will mark it as states 127. And then I have Ms. LaSeneschal's summary report, which I will mark as 127A.
Any objection?
Your Honor, no objection.
127, excuse me, 127A will be admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Ms. LaSeneschal, if I may approach with states 127A. And does that appear to be a complete and accurate copy of your summary report?
Yes.
Perfect. Ms. LaSeneschal, can you walk us through how you completed your comparison in this case?
Okay, so I start by retrieving the items from our evidence vault within our section. I transfer the custody to myself, and then I begin my worksheet and I open the items and look at the class characteristics. If the class characteristics are similar, I will group those items together and do a microscopic examination on the comparison microscope, looking at the individual characteristics or potentially subclass characteristics, and looking for patterns of agreement or patterns of disagreement.
And can you describe what you observed with regard to lab items 1 and then 29 through 39?
So they had similar class characteristics, and the microscopic examination determined that the items 1 and 29 through 39 cartridge cases were fired by the same firearm.
What types of things were you looking for in order to make that determination?
With these items, I used the breech face impression.
And can you describe what that is?
So the breech face is going to be the forwardmost part of the breech block that sits against the case, the head of the cartridge case in the firearm. So the cartridge case, the head of the cartridge case is going to be marked by the breech face during the firing process.
And how are you able to decide whether or not something is a match when you look at that?
So when I'm looking at them, I am looking for patterns of agreement. So the same characteristics in the same location and the whole pattern of them, not just one. So in this case, there was sufficient agreement of the fine short linear detail on the primer and the gross short linear detail on the case head.
And you described comparing two items side by side previously. So just kind of walking through step by step, you'd take item 1, item 29, and look at those two items side by side?
Yes, so I would, in this case, I used item 1 as a reference, so I did item 1 to item 29.
Slow down,
item 1 to item 30, item 1 to item 31.
And in all of those comparisons, what was your conclusion?
So that all of those items, items 1 and items 29 through 39, were fired by the same firearm.
And then how about lab items 40 through 43?
So 4 items. So item 40 was a jacket fragment, and that was inconclusive to items 41 through 43. So meaning there was agreement of the class characteristics between item 40 and the items 41 through 43. However, the comparison of microscopic characteristics was inconclusive. Therefore, the item 40 jacket fragment could not be identified or eliminated as having been fired by the same firearm as the items 41 through 43 jacket and bullets.
And what would lead that to be an inconclusive result?
So in this instance, item 40 was just a portion of a jacket, and it did not have a lot of detail to use.
And how about item 41?
So items 41 through 43, which were jacket and bullets, they were determined to be okay, so there was agreement of all discernible class and individual characteristics, possible individual characteristics between the items 41 through 43 jacket and bullets. However, the potential for subclass carryover could not be eliminated. Therefore, the items 41 through 43 jacket and bullets were either fired by the same firearm or by a different firearm manufactured with the same tool in the same approximate state of wear. So in this instance, without the firearm, I was not able to eliminate the potential for subclass characteristics. So I can narrow it down saying it was they were either fired by the same firearm or a different firearm manufactured by the same tool in the same approximate state of wear.
And were you able to determine a caliber for those items?
Yes, for some of them. So the caliber of the item 40 jacket fragment could not be determined. The item 41 jacket was determined to be caliber 38 class, 9mm, 38, or 357. The caliber of the item 41 lead fragment was unable to be determined. The item 42 bullet was determined to be caliber 38 class, 9mm, 38, or 357. The item 43 bullet was determined to be caliber 38 class, 9mm, 38, or 357.
Following your examination, what did you do with this evidence?
So once I complete my examination, I request a microscopic verification. So another qualified examiner will take these items of evidence and come to independent conclusions to verify whether my conclusions were valid. Then, after that is complete, we do an administrative and technical review. So that's going to be looking at my documentation, determining if it supports my conclusions, whether I followed lab procedures, and checking for clerical accuracy.
And then what happens?
And when the review process is complete, we can release the report to the agency, and I can return the items of evidence to the secure evidence vault in our section, and our evidence control section can return those items to the agency.
And did you follow that procedure in this case?
Yes.
If I could have just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Those are all the questions I have for Ms. Seneschal. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Judge, thank you. And before I say it, can you please pronounce your name again so I say it correctly?
It's La Seneschal.
La Seneschal. Miss La Seneschal, good morning.
Good morning.
You started your questioning today in reference to your background, your experience.
Correct.
Now, you mentioned that you work at the State Crime Lab, correct?
Yes.
And you've worked there for 3.5 years.
Yes.
And so you started in May of 2022?
Yes.
And prior to working there, where was your employment?
The Wilmington Police Department?
Okay. And when you were at the Wilmington Police Department, did you have a similar role in examining evidence for them?
I was a crime scene technician and the crime scene unit supervisor, so I did not do this type of examination there.
Okay. But after you left, which would have been in what year did you leave the Wilmington Police Department?
2022.
Okay. Then you immediately started taking these classes to prepare yourself for the position you're in right now. Is that correct?
I did my training program once I was hired by the State Crime Lab.
So you started that in May of 2022.
Yes.
And you began your testing of these items in May of 2022, or do you recall when you started actually testing these items?
So I did not begin this examination until December 3rd of 2025.
Okay. And so this would have been after you've had at least 3 years of experience before you started testing material for this case. Is that correct?
So our training program is long. I was released for casework in April of 2024.
Okay. And in that time, a rough estimate, how many firearm comparisons have you completed between the time you were released or able to do it in 2024 and now?
Since really hundreds of comparisons.
And so you have had situations before where maybe you had projectiles and shell casings, but no firearm. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you had mentioned that when you're looking at these, when you're doing this analysis, there are 3 major characteristics or 3 classes that you're looking at.
Yes.
And I apologize if I don't say it perfect, but bear with me. So first you have the class characteristics.
Yes.
And those are like the big characteristics.
Yes, it's a broader, larger group.
And instead of using a firearm, I'm going to use a car since most of us are familiar with that. So a class characteristic would be like a Tesla. Like everyone can kind of recognize this brand manufacturer. And then after that, I don't know if this is in any specific order, then you talked about individual characteristics.
Yes.
And subclass characteristics.
Yes.
Before I get into kind of what those mean, is there an order in which do you start with class and then go to subclass, or do you start with class and then you go to individual?
So we start with class, then we look at individual, and if there is a sufficient pattern of agreement of individual characteristics, or what we think might be individual, that's when we do the assessment of subclass. Could these be subclass, or are they indeed individual characteristics?
Okay. And so if we're talking about the car, it's a Tesla, all these Teslas have the same rims, the same door handles, the same way in which the car starts, but maybe there's something unique because there's a dent that may separate one from the other. Is that where we might get into individual characteristics?
Individual characteristics would be the things particular to one vehicle only, such as the VIN number.
Okay, the VIN number, okay. And then the subclass, because it's still made by the same manufacturer, may have a different VIN number. How would we separate within that subclass? I think you mentioned maybe there was an issue with the paint, and maybe there was the door was a little different than the others. Is that where we get to when we get the subclass?
Yeah, subclass is still indicative of a restricted group source, so it's a smaller group, but it's not one item.
Okay. And so when we're looking at these shell casings, start there. You mentioned that you started with 1, and then you started comparing 1, and then we're talking item number, not the state's evidence number. You compared item 1 to item 29.
Yes.
And first you would literally take this shell casing and you would look at it with your naked eye to kind of see what thing, obviously with gloves on, but you would look and see what characteristics were noticeable.
Yes.
Did you remark in your report or your note maybe the name of the manufacturer or the initials on these shell casings?
Yes, we do note the manufacturer.
And so for item 1, who was the manufacturer?
Remington?
Okay. And based on your training and experience, do you know what, or do you recall from this case, if there are any words, initials, or things written on these shell casings along the back of the shell casing or along the side of it?
I did not note that there were any marks placed on item 1 prior to me receiving it. I did.
Okay. But you would have looked to see that the way you would identify it was a Remington is because it says it on the shell casing. Is that correct?
Yes, the case had. The case had R-P 9mm Luger on it.
Okay, thank you. And then item 29, did it have a similar insignia on it?
Yes, item 29 did have.
And for brevity's sake, items 30, 31, 32, and 33 all had similar insignias on them. Is that correct?
Yes.
But items 34 and 35 had something different. What was that manufacturer?
Winchester.
Okay. And although they are different manufacturers, they're still in the same class?
Yes, they are the same caliber, and they were all 9mm Luger caliber, and the firing pin shape was hemispherical, the firing pin aperture shape was round, the breech face detail type was linear, so the other class characteristics that I looked at were also similar.
And when you're talking about the other class characteristics, are these individual class characteristics that you're referring to?
No.
We're still talking about the class characteristics.
Class.
Okay. But what you're saying is although the first 5 or so items, make sure I get it right, items 1, 29, 30, 31, 32, and 33, those were the Remington that had the RP on them. And then items 34 and 35 were the Winchester. Although they were different brands, they were still the same class, correct?
Yes.
And that means that they can be fired from the same gun.
Yes.
Okay. And then moving along, items 36 through 39, those were of what manufacturer, do you recall?
Remington.
Okay. And once you kind of looked at these and said these are of the same class, when you were discussing, I think, when we got to items 41 through 43, those are the projectiles, correct? The fragments?
40 through 43, yes.
40 through 43. Now, were you able to determine that those fragments were connected to the shell casings of 1 through 39?
No, that is not something we can determine.
Okay. And so after we get this class, then you're taking your microscope and you're kind of comparing these markings, correct?
Yes.
And you say you look for patterns of agreement. Were there any patterns of disagreement between any of these shell casings that you notated while you're looking at them in your microscope?
The only thing that I noted was that item 35 had less breech face impression detail than the other items, but there was still sufficient agreement.
Okay. And so when we're going through this process, this isn't like, we'll say, you're not a DNA comparison, so I'm going to rephrase that, strike that. The probability of match, is there a probability that you use to determine that these are actually similar, maybe percentage-wise or something along those lines?
No, we don't use probabilities or percentages.
And so it's either a match or not a match.
Or it could be inconclusive, where there's just not enough information to make a definitive determination.
And if these items came from the same firearm, would there be a reason that you know or you're aware of why item 35 would be different from these other ones.
Yes, there's lots of factors that can affect how the items mark, and that could be due to ammunition, the type of ammunition. It could be due to pressure associated with that ammunition, the composition, if it's brass versus nickel.
Now, the conditions in which the projectile is shot through, whether it's hot or it's cold, nighttime, daytime, whether it's raining, does that also affect the tool markings and things that you recover and you test?
That should not affect.
Okay. And when we're dealing with just these projectiles, you had mentioned that 40 was in such a small or deteriorated state, you could not make a true match or comparison with the other three, I guess 2 or 3 projectiles. Is that correct?
Yes, 40 was just a jacket fragment.
Okay. Now, when making determination of what type of firearm shot these shell casings and shot these projectiles, were you able to make a determination of that?
I do not know which firearm fired these items.
Okay. And would there be anything else other than the actual firearm that would get you closer to that answer?
The one thing we could do is run a GRC list, which is a general rifling characteristics database where you can put in some of these class characteristics, and it could give you a list of potential firearms that have fired. So it would give you a make and a model of firearms that could potentially have fired them.
And did you carry out that task of looking to see if that information was available, if you can find it, or is that something you have to wait to be asked by law enforcement to do?
Correct. We need a request for that from the submitting agency.
One moment, Judge.
Yes, sir.
A couple more questions. Can you definitively say that items 42 and 43 were fired from the same firearm based on your observations and your analysis?
Items 42 and 43?
Yes, ma'am.
No, because of the potential for subclass carryover. So the most I can say is that they were fired by the same firearm or by a different firearm manufactured with the same tool in the same approximate state of wear.
Okay. And I had asked you a question about this testing, additional testing that is possible. To be clear, you were not requested to do that additional testing. Is that correct?
I was not requested to do a GRC search, no.
Thank you. A GRC search. No further questions, Judge.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, thank you so much for being here, Special Agent. You're free to go.
Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, the state will call Sergeant Goodwin to the stand. Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you please state and spell your name for the court reporter?
Keith Goodwin, Keithgoodwin.
And where do you work?
The Orange County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been there?
Since July of 2013.
And what's your current position with the Sheriff's Office?
I'm currently the Sergeant of the Criminal Investigations Division.
What other roles have you had at the Sheriff's Office since 2013?
I started out in the detention facility for a couple of months. I worked on the patrol division for 2.5 years. I come to investigations in 2016. In 2019, I was assigned to the FBI Safe Streets Task Force out of Raleigh. And then in 2024, I became Sergeant in Investigations and come off the task force. And that's my current role.
And drawing your attention to September 18th of 2022, did you respond to the area off of Buckhorn Road where the bodies were located?
I did.
And why did you respond there?
Received a phone call from my captain at the time, Captain Ray, about 2 individuals that were on 4-wheelers going down an access road that located 2 deceased bodies.
And about what time was that call?
I would say it was 3:30 that afternoon, 3:30 that afternoon, best of my knowledge.
And what happened when you arrived on scene?
The first thing that I noticed, pulled over at the intersection of Buckhorn and Yarborough, on the opposite side of the road from where the crime scene was. I noticed that there was already a crime scene tape put up. Several investigators were standing around. I saw several evidence markers on the ground. I first went to Deputy Sampson, who was maintaining the crime scene log, to have her put me down for the time that I arrived. After that, I walked up the access road. There's a little bit of an incline going up to the top where ultimately the bodies were located. Saw several items of evidence that had already been marked, to include shell casings and what appeared to be blood splatter at the time at the top of the hill.
And what else did you observe on scene?
So of importance, one of the first things that I noticed was that both kids, Devin and Lyric, were lying on their backs, off to the side of the initial access road area, as you saw in some of the crime scene photos. Both of their arms were out to the side in a T formation, and both of their legs were down, straight out, with Lyric having one of her legs being slightly bent. As I looked at the bodies as they were laying there, I noticed that Devin's pants were down just below midways of his thighs, and you could see his boxer briefs. And what stood out to me was that there was gravel on the front part of Devin's boxer briefs around his private part area. There was also dirt that I observed on the top part of Devin's right sock at the top of his toes. Devin's sweatshirt was pulled up, as it's been previously testified to, and there was also dirt on the front of Devin's sweatshirt. It should be, one of the other things that was very interesting was Devin's pants were pulled down, or they were down below his boxer briefs. And as it was testified previously, there was from the medical examiner, there was a bullet hole in the right thigh of Devin's leg. The hole in Devin's pants was down right above his knee, with no wound being observed there, as if Devin had been drugged from his stomach and then ultimately rolled over. One thing that I noticed on Lyric's body was that there was a bullet hole around the front part of her sweatshirt where there was also dirt or dust from the gravel located there as well, meaning that she at some point would have been face down and then ultimately rolled over into the position that we discovered them in.
What, if anything else, did you do while you were on scene?
I didn't do, I attempted to find evidence, but everything that was already marked is the only thing that I found, and then I left before the scene was cleared.
And later in the evening on September 18th, did you respond to the residence of Dexter Clark?
I did.
And where is that?
Dexter lived off of Holt Street in the city limits of Mebane.
And why did you go there?
Captain Ray had called and said that he had a phone conversation with Dexter about him noticing that his firearm was missing after he had learned that Devin had been shot and killed.
What happened at Mr. Clark's residence?
I arrived there with Investigator Hall. We walked around to the rear of the residence where Dexter was at. He invited us inside, went to a brown, if you will, dresser drawer with multiple drawers in it. He opened up the top right drawer of the dresser, showed us the box that the firearm was in, showed us the box of ammunition, and said, obviously, the firearm's not here. I was able to manually observe the bullets that were in the box and remembered seeing the shell casings that were at the scene and knowing that they were the same.
And what made you believe that they were the same?
The markings on the stamping on the backside of the shell or the bullet.
What, if anything else, in relation to this investigation did you do on September 18th?
After leaving from Dexter's house in Mebane, I responded back to the sheriff's office with the evidence, the bullets that were collected, and as being a part of the FBI task force at the time, I called them to request assistance in this case.
And what type of assistance were your colleagues on the task force able to provide?
They could do search warrants, court orders, phone information. They could be another assistance in neighborhood canvassing, interviews, apprehension, once we determined who the suspect was, things of that nature.
And were they able to assist in this case?
Yes.
Moving forward to the following morning, Monday, September 19th, can you describe what occurred on that morning?
Yeah, so that morning, the evening of the 18th, when I had the phone call with one of the members on the task force, they agreed to meet at the sheriff's office at 9 a.m. and we held a briefing at the office to kind of go over everything that needed to be done, what had been done, and who could do it. And so after the briefing was concluded, I went with the members of the task force and started completing different types of search warrants, court orders, and stuff of that nature.
Now, at this time, did you all have Lyric's electronic devices that her family had provided?
We did.
And what, if anything, did you do with those devices?
There were search warrants completed, forensic download, scratch that. The parents gave us consent, so we did not do a search warrant. A forensic download was completed. I was able to review the forensic download. I was able to review the actual device itself and see the contents of conversations via Snapchat, as that's how I knew that they had met up, essentially, on the early morning hours of the 17th.
Can you just briefly describe for the jury what a forensic download means?
Forensic download is a download that it's a software that we have here at the sheriff's office that we plug the device into, and it extracts makes a digital copy of everything that's on the device. Once we have the download, we then put it into a different software to generate a report. And once we have the report, we are able to go through and read everything in a more streamlined way than having to go through all the apps on the phone and stuff like that.
When a forensic download is conducted, are you able to manipulate the data at all?
No.
And in reviewing Lyric's device forensic downloads, were you able to determine a Snapchat account for her?
I was, yes.
And what was that?
Lyric Isabella, 2 A's, no space.
And what, if anything, did you see on her Snapchat account?
I noticed that there was communication in the early morning hours of Saturday, September 17th to Snapchat account basketball_1296.
At that time, did you know who basketball_1296 was?
At that time, I did not.
What did you do once you discovered these messages to that Snapchat account?
Sent a search warrant to Snapchat for the account information for basketball_1296.
And, sorry.
As well as for Lyric's Snapchat account.
And what type of information were you hoping to receive from Snapchat?
Knowing how Snapchat operates, I know that data can be limited. So I was hoping to obtain any type of text communication between the two accounts to have more information on what exactly was taking place and what if any, anybody else they had talked to leading up to this image that was captured on her Snapchat, screenshot, if you will.
Your Honor, this time I would seek, one question. Did you receive a return from Snapchat?
I did, yes.
At this time, I would seek to introduce States Exhibit 128 and accompanying affidavit, States Exhibit 129, the Snapchat return by stipulation.
Just so clarify, the Snapchat return, is it for both Snapchat's accounts that we have been talking about?
No, ma'am, it is just for basketball_1296.
Let's show number 128 is the Snapchat search warrant return for the account basketball_1296.
Yes, Your Honor.
And number 129 is the affidavit, business records affidavit accompanying that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection to the admission of states 128 and 129?
No objection to those. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. States 128 and 129 will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. The stipulation also includes that the subscriber identifier basketball_1296 belonged to Devin Clark.
Let me just clarify. Is that an exhibit that you're admitting, or is that a stipulation between the parties, or you just let me know?
This is a stipulation between the parties, Your Honor.
All right, may I have that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen. The state of North Carolina, by and through the Assistant District Attorney, represents to the court that the state and the defendant have entered into the following stipulation. 1, information including subscriber information, communication content, and transactional metadata was obtained by investigators in this case from Snap Inc., the parent company of the Snapchat app for subscriber identified as basketball_1296. Number 2, those records are business records of the description contained in North Carolina Rule of Evidence 803, subsection 6, and such records may be authenticated by affidavit. The records obtained by law enforcement are relevant to this trial and are not otherwise inadmissible. Number 3, the parties further stipulate that the subscriber identifier basketball_1296 belonged to Devin Clark, and that these records are being introduced as State's Exhibit number 128. All right. Thank you, Madam DA.
Thank you. Sergeant Goodwin, did you have an opportunity to review that return from Snapchat?
I was, yes.
And did you find any messages between Lyric Isabella and the owner of this account, Mr. Clark?
I did, yes.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Sergeant Goodwin, I'll show you what I've marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibits 130 and 131, and ask you if you recognize those.
Yes.
And what are States 30 and 131?
States 130 is the communication thread from Lyric and Devin using the Lyric Isabella with 2 A's and basketball_1296 Snapchat usernames.
And can you please walk the jury through what the content of those messages is?
Yes.
Okay, I hate to interrupt. Can we get a time frame we're talking about here, or at least the beginning of the chat?
Absolutely, Your Honor. Looking at States 130, are there timestamps connected with those messages?
Yes.
And is this an extraction report from the software that you mentioned earlier?
It is, yes.
What does the timestamp say?
The timestamp says on the first message, 5:21:13 a.m.
And what time zone or time zone, sure, are we talking about at natively for these messages?
That would be UTC.
What's UTC?
4 hours faster than Eastern Standard Time.
And so to convert that time to Eastern Standard Time, what time would that first message be?
1:21 a.m.
Thank you. And who contacted who at 1:21 a.m.?
Lyric contacted Devin.
And what does that message say?
It gives Lyric's address.
And then are there additional messages?
Yes.
And what is the next message?
At these are all 9/17. That Saturday morning at 1:22 a.m. She sends a screenshot telling Devin where to pick her up.
And is that screenshot State's Exhibit 131?
It is, yes.
And what does it appear to be contained in that screenshot?
It shows where Lyric currently was. She screenshots the area, circles it, and then sends it to Devin.
Could y'all approach real quick?
Your Honor, this time the state would move to admit state's exhibits 130 and 131.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, states 130 and 131 will be admitted. Thank you.
Thank you. And after the screenshot, what is the next message?
Also, on 9/17 at 1:22 a.m., it says park there.
And what's the next message after that?
The same date, the same time. It says like on the side of the road on that side.
And how about the next message?
Same date and same time, and cut the lights off when you there.
And how about the next message?
Same date and same time till I get in the car. And those are all from Lyric to Devin.
And is that the entirety of the messages that you located between Lyric and Devin?
Yes.
May I reapproach the witness?
You may.
And may I publish states 131 to the jury?
You may. Just 131?
Just 131. Just want to hold it up.
Yes.
May I reposition, Judge?
Yes, sir.
Did you find any other messages between Devin and Lyric in the Snapchat return?
Between them two? No.
Is that unusual?
No.
And why not?
Snapchat is known for once you send something to someone, it deletes itself. And so in this instance, some of the messages or photos or whatever else could have been sent could have been deleted.
In reviewing the Snapchat return, did you find any other messages that Devin sent that night?
I did.
And could you just give a brief overview of what those messages were?
Devin was inquiring a ride from some friends about meeting up with Lyric to, I guess, to perform some type of sexual favors or some sort.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Sergeant Goodwin, I'll show you what I've marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 132 and ask you if you recognize this.
I do.
And what is contained in State's Exhibit 132?
It is the extraction report for basketball underscore 1296 and a conversation with a username JAHDEEZYYY.
And what's the date and time on that conversation?
As it appears here, it is 9/17/2022 at 3:01 and 40 seconds a.m.
And is that in UTC or Eastern Standard Time?
This is in UTC.
So what would that be in Eastern Standard?
11:01 p.m. on the night of the 16th.
Your Honor, this time I would move to admit States 132.
And if I could just clarify, Madam DA, is this an extraction report from a phone or from Snapchat?
From Snapchat.
Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Any objection to states number 132?
No objection to its submission, Judge.
States 132 will be admitted.
Sergeant Goodwin, could you walk us through the messages between basketball_1296 and Jadizi?
The first message on 9/16/2022 at 11:01 p.m., Devin sends the message to Jadizi, "Hell you doing, fool?"
And what's the next message?
On 9/16 at 11:05 p.m., Jadizi responds, "NSGNG."
And do you have any sort of opinion about what that means?
I do.
What is that?
Not shit gang.
And how about the next message?
Devin responds to Jadizi at 11:05 and says, "You try and get 8 tonight."
And do you have any opinion about what that means?
I do, yes.
And what do you think that means?
Oral sex.
And how about the next message?
Jadizi replies back at the same date and time stamp at 11:05 p.m. Says, "By who?" with an emoji,
And what emoji is it?
a laughing face.
And does Devin respond?
He does, yes.
What does he say?
At 11:05 p.m., same date, LMAO, that bitch lyric.
And what does LMAO mean, if you know?
Laughing my ass off.
And what's the next message?
Same date at 11:06 p.m., Devin responds back, "She said she'll eat both us."
And what's the next message?
Same date, same time stamp at 11:06 p.m. It's 2 laughing emojis from Devin to Jadizi.
And how about the next message?
Jadizi responds the same date, same time at 11:06 p.m. and says, "Wait, what?" with 2 what appears to be laughing emojis.
And does Devin respond?
Yes, he does.
What does he say?
At 11:07 p.m. on the same date, LMAO OMM but shit WTW.
Do you have any idea what any of those acronyms mean?
I do, yes.
And what do they mean?
Laughing my ass off on my mama, but shit, what's the word?
And how about the next message?
Devin sends a message to Jadizi at 11:07 p.m. on the night of the 16th. "You can get car and shit first."
And how about the next one?
Same date, same time stamp at 11:07 p.m. 2 laughing emojis Devin sent to Jadizi.
And the next one?
Jadizi responds at 11:07 p.m. "You telling me she don't got no friend or nothing," with laughing emojis.
And the next message?
Devin responds to Jadizi at 11:07, LMAO, "That's what I asked." And she was like, "She not with none of them."
And how about the next one?
Devin then responds again to Jadizi at 11:08 p.m. "She wanted me to come beat, but I'm not on wheels." And she was like, "Since she want to fuck me so bad, she'll fuck whoever I'm with too."
And what's the next message?
Jadizi responds to Devin at 11:10 p.m. "Damn, she a eater, FS," with laughing emojis.
Do you know what FS means?
Yes, it means for sure.
And what's the next message?
Devin responds back, "That's what I'm saying, and I'm trying to get 8 at 11:11 p.m. with a laughing emoji."
And the next one?
Devin responds or sends another message to Jadizi at 11:12 p.m. on the same date. So WTW, laughing emojis, which indicates what's the word.
And does Jadizi respond?
He does at 11:23 p.m.
And what does it say?
It depends on where she CS, I don't got no gas. Maybe a crying emoji.
Do you know what CS means?
I do not.
And then is there, well, what does the next message say?
Devin sends another message at 1:05 a.m. with 2 laughing emojis to Jadizi.
So it jumped from 11:23 p.m. to 1:05 a.m.
That's correct.
And then were there any other messages between the two of them that evening?
No,
Were you ever able to determine who Jadizi is?
I was not.
Were there any other messages that Devin sent that night?
There was.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Sergeant Goodwin, I'll show you what I've marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 133 and ask you if you recognize it.
I do.
And what is State's Exhibit 133?
It is a group chat with 11 individuals with several messages back and forth.
And is that also from the Snapchat return?
It is, yes.
And looking at the first message there, who sent that message?
Devin.
And what time was that?
It shows 9/17/2022 at 4:46 with 14 seconds a.m.
And is that in UTC or Eastern Time?
That's in UTC.
So what would that be in Eastern Time?
12:46 a.m.
Your Honor, this time I would move State's Exhibit 133.
Any objection?
No objection, Judge.
States 133 will be admitted.
And what message does Devin send at that time?
He ats the name POURTRIS, you on wheels, question mark, on 9/17 at 12:46 a.m.
And do you have an opinion about what he was asking?
Yes, he was asking somebody for a ride.
And what's the next message there?
Devin sends another message to the group on 9/17 at 12:47 a.m. Who on wheels and want free buns?
Do you have an opinion about what that means?
I do.
And what's that?
He is essentially offering up sex for anybody that can give him a ride.
And what's the next message?
Devin sends another message 9/17 at 12:47 a.m. basically with 3 laughing emojis.
He says basically, or does the message actually say basically?
Yes.
Other than what we've just walked through, did you find any other messages that Devin sent that night?
No.
I want to shift gears a little bit to the, back to Monday, the 19th, at some point, did you receive information from Captain Ray?
I did, yes.
And what information did you receive?
He had spoken to an individual by the name of Christian Sykes, who talked on the phone, said that Mr. Ross had confessed to him about what had taken place, and provided a phone number for Mr. Ross.
And what was that number?
Area code 908-440-5523.
What, if any, steps did you all take with that information during your investigation?
And a database that we have that's available to us in law enforcement, plug that telephone number in to see who it comes back to. It come back to Mr. Ross as it had been used by him before for whatever reason, and an address of 309 Moore Road in Mebane, which was the address of Antoine Bryant.
And what happened next in your investigation?
Several investigators went to Antoine's house, not knowing if Mr. Ross would be there or not. Made contact with Mr. Bryant, who then decided he would come down to the office for an interview. And other investigators went to Deerfield Trace, where Mr. Ross's mother lived, as that was also an address listed in the database.
And what, if any, part did you have in that, in what happened next?
I interviewed Mr. Bryant at the sheriff's office.
And were you then informed of anything that was discovered at Deerfield Trace?
Yes.
What was that?
They had located Mr. Ross's mother's vehicle in question that had damage to the right front fender.
And at some point, were you informed that that vehicle was being seized?
Yes, I was.
And what were the next steps that you took?
Completed a search warrant for the vehicle, and later that evening it was executed.
Were you there?
I was, yes.
And who else was with you?
Investigator Baldwin, Investigator Hendricks, and Investigator Vila.
What, if any, observations did you make about the vehicle?
Initially, looking at the outside, obviously, Investigator Baldwin was taking his photos, but on the outside front right fender above the tire, I noticed what appeared to be small spots of blood, what appeared to be blood. Those were obviously marked as key pieces of evidence. Once Investigator Baldwin finished taking his photos on the outside and the inside, utilizing gloves and stuff, flashlight, there was a couple of brown stains that appeared on the driver's side and passenger side by where the legs go down under the center console. That I pointed out. I noticed in the back hatch area of the GMC Terrain there was a booster seat that it was just upside down, not in any particular order. There was a can of Pringles that had been opened, and the Pringle chips were all over the back of the hatch or the back area. And there was also a bottle or a container of Armor All wipes where the lid was still open.
And were you present throughout the processing of the vehicle?
I was, yes.
Were you present when the luminol testing was completed?
I was, yes.
Can you describe that process?
As Investigator Baldwin testified, he put on protective gear, head to toe, to move the vehicle from inside of our sally port at the jail down behind the detention facility where it was complete darkness. Then we utilized a tarp over top. We utilized a tarp over top to have complete darkness inside. And after the collection of evidence on the outside of the vehicle inside the sally port, he sprayed luminol on the areas that we believe to have been blood at the time, and it lit up as he said it, as he described that it would, in the very bright color. After doing the spots on the outside of the vehicle, we moved to the inside of the vehicle, and as he described, not being able to get a picture of it, the dome light, the handprint was very, very prominent, to the point where it looked as if the light was trying to be covered up in complete darkness to not be seen by passing cars, anybody else around the area.
Did you have anything else to do with the processing of that vehicle?
I did.
What was that?
I did a search warrant for the infotainment center, which is the brains inside of the like radio area that connects to the Bluetooth and all those kind of things.
And why did you do that?
To see if there was any data located, if anybody that was present in the vehicle that night would have had their phones connected to the Bluetooth to give any type of identifying information.
And did you ever receive any information from that?
I did not.
In the early stages of your investigation, did you obtain a cell phone number for Devin Clark?
I did.
And where did that number come from?
Lieutenant Hunter provided me that number, who got it from Devin's mother, Tiffany.
And what was the number?
743-244-0344.
And what, if anything, did you do with that information?
I determined what carrier that number belonged to, and found it to be Verizon.
How do you determine what carrier a number belongs to?
We have a database that we can plug in the cell phone number, and it'll tell us any type of identifying information, who's registered to that number, and then who the carrier is.
And why did you take that step?
To try and obtain historical records, any type of communication that may be available for the early morning hours of 9/17 through 9/18, because when we got there that afternoon of the 18th, Devin was not in possession of his cell phone. And I knew that, according to Dad, during my conversations with him, that Devin always had his phone with him.
And how do you obtain those records from the carrier?
I sent in a search warrant for the historical records.
And did you receive a return from Verizon?
I did, yes.
Did you also follow up on the phone number that Christian Sykes had provided for Isaiah?
I did, yes.
And what did you do with that information?
The same thing I did for Devin's. I determined what carrier it belonged to, found that it was a T-Mobile number, so I sent in a search warrant to T-Mobile for the historical records on that device as well as completing a court order pin, trap, and trace to get geolocation data every 15 minutes, actively every 15 minutes during the course of the investigation.
Madam DA, might be a good spot to take a quick break.
Certainly, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're at the point where we've taken our morning recess. I know it's been 3 whole days since you've seen me, but I'm assuming you remember all of the rules that I've told you about. So please remember those rules. If everybody else will please remain seated, we'll ask our jury to step out, take a 15-minute recess. All right, all of our jurors are outside the courtroom at this time. Anything we need to address on behalf of the state?
No, Your Honor.
On behalf of the defense?
Nothing from the defense. Thank you, Judge.
I will just remind those folks who are here in the courtroom for the last time that this is difficult testimony. I understand that. I once again heard that people were upset, and it was at a volume that I can hear, and I'm deaf in my left ear. So I know that if I am aware that there's something going on out in the audience, that my jury is too. If you cannot listen to the testimony without having a visible or auditory reaction to it, I'm going to ask you to step outside. The next time I have to address this issue, whoever it is, you are going to be told you cannot come back inside the courtroom. All right? I'll remind everybody once again, the jury cannot be distracted from the testimony that is being presented. And that is my primary and most important concern in directing this trial. So I'll ask everybody to remember that. I will tell you one more time. The next time there is a disturbance in the courtroom, though, whoever it is going to be asked to leave. I'll inform my bailiffs there to tell that person they are not to come back into the courtroom. All right? If anybody has any questions, you can talk to the bailiffs about that. You can talk to either the DA or the defense attorney if you happen to be here in support of some of the folks who are here in the courtroom. But I think that's pretty clear. All right? So with that, we will take a 15-minute recess. Thank you.
How are you? I'm good. How are you? I'm Good, I got it. Get the pen back there. something, 5 things show up, you'd never do it.
All right, anything we need to address before we bring the jury back?
No, Your Honor.
Nothing from the defense, thank you, Judge.
We had a quick bench conference. I was just asking the state if they were going to talk about exhibits 130 and 131 that they get admitted, which they did. All right, let's go ahead and bring our folks back.
Oh, yeah. Sergeant Goodwin retake.
Yes, please, retake the stand. My apologies. All right, we've got everybody back. Looks like ready to go. Ms. Orr?
Thank you, Your Honor. We were just discussing the Verizon phone records and the T-Mobile phone records. I have marked States Exhibits 134 and 135, that being the Verizon phone records and the accompanying business records affidavit.
134 is the Verizon phone records. Do you have for whom?
For Mr. Clark.
Mr. Clark's phone records from Verizon, and 135 is the affidavit for business records.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection from the defense?
No objection, Your Honor.
States 134 and 135 then will be admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Also, I have States 136 and 137. 136 being a disk containing the phone records from T-Mobile for the defendant, and 137 being that business records affidavit.
Any objection from the defense?
No objection, Judge, thank you.
All right. States 136 and 137 will be admitted.
And I have those stipulations for the court as well.
Thank you.
If I may approach.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, there are two stipulations. The first is State of North Carolina through the Assistant District Attorney. The state and the defendant have entered the following stipulation. 1, historical cell site location information and subscriber information for the phone number 743-244-0344. These records are business records and have been authenticated by affidavit as business records. Number 3, the parties further stipulate that the phone number 743-244-0344 belonged to Devin Clark. The next stipulation from the state of North Carolina through the Assistant District Attorney, the state and the defendant have agreed and stipulate 1, historical cell site location information and subscriber information for the phone number 908-440-5523. 2, these records are business records. They have been authenticated by affidavit. Number 3, the parties further stipulate that the number 908-440-5523 belong to the defendant at the relevant time. Thank you, Ms. Orr.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sergeant Goodwin, once you received those records from Verizon and T-Mobile, did you do anything else with them?
I did, yes, ma'am.
And what was that?
Once I received the records for both devices, telephone numbers, I contacted Harrison Putman with the FBI, who is on their CAS team.
And do you know if Mr. Putman reviewed those records?
He did, yes.
And did he generate a report?
He did, yes.
When did you take out charges against the defendant?
Tuesday, September 20th, 2022, I obtained 2 juvenile petitions for 1 count each of first-degree murder for the deaths of Devin Clark and Lyric Woods. Mr. Ross was then entered into NCIC, which is a national database, wanted for the 2 counts of murder with full extradition.
Sergeant Goodwin, did you have an opportunity to review any surveillance video in connection with this case?
I did, yes, ma'am.
And where was that from?
The Petro gas station located at 500 Buckhorn Road in Mebane.
Can you describe where the Petro is in reference to where the bodies were found?
The Petro is approximately 2 miles north on Buckhorn Road from where the bodies were discovered.
So approximately how long would it take to drive there?
Give or take 5 minutes.
And what time frame did you gather for the Petro video?
I will remember between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. on the morning of 9/17/2022.
And did you observe anything relevant on the Petro video during that time frame?
I did, yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, this will be State's Exhibit 138, the Petro video by stipulation.
Are you moving that into evidence?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
States 138 would be omitted.
And I have the stipulation for the court.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, state, through the Assistant District Attorney, represents that the state and the defendant have entered into the following stipulation. Investigators with the Orange County Sheriff's Office obtained surveillance video from the Petro Travel Center located at 500 Buckhorn Road here in Mebane, or in Mebane, excuse me, we're not actually in Mebane. 2, the surveillance video obtained by law enforcement is relevant to this trial and is not otherwise inadmissible. And 3, without objection, the state introduced the video as State's Exhibit number 138 without need for further authentication. Ms. Orr?
Thank you, Your Honor. And I've discussed this with Mr. Trapp, but because this video takes quite a long time to load via disk, I've put an exact copy on my desktop and I have it open and ready to play.
If there's any problems with that, Mr. Trapp, please let me know.
No, Your Honor, for efficiency's sake, I think this is the best way to do it.
Would you like to publish that to the jury?
Not quite yet, Your Honor. Thank you. Investigator Goodwin, can you describe what you saw on the Petro video?
Yes, so it should be noted that the video was off. The video timestamp was 2:11 to 2:19 around the time that we've got here. I observed, upon viewing the video, I observed a white GMC Terrain traveling north on Buckhorn Road enter the parking lot from the far east side. It'd be the first entrance coming north on Buckhorn. Car pulls around initially to the far east side gas pumps. Mr. Ross gets out, realizes that the gas tank is on the opposite side of the vehicle. He then drives around from the far east to the next one over, where you can see in the video the vehicle strikes the concrete post. You can see the vehicle jolt back and forth. After several attempts of backing up and pulling forward, Mr. Ross finally gets to a gas pump, and it's where he's seen exiting the vehicle and walking up to the window to pay.
And in reviewing this video as compared with the other evidence in the case, does it appear that the timestamp on the video is accurate?
When compared, so no, it does not. When compared with the cell phone data, historical data that we got back, the video appears to be 10 minutes slow. So 2:11 in the video would actually be 2:21.
And in your experience, have you encountered store surveillance video that reflects the incorrect timestamp previously?
All the time.
Your Honor, now this time I would ask to publish a portion of this State's 138 to the jury.
All right, just give us a time frame.
Yes, Your Honor. The timestamp on the video where I will start it is 9/17/2022. The timestamp on the video is 2/11/33. All right, starting the video at 2/11/33. For the record, I have stopped the video at timestamp 2:19:56. And Sergeant Goodwin, the first time that Issiah, well, let me ask you this first. The person depicted on this video has blonde hair.
Correct.
Can you describe how you identified this person as the defendant?
Based off of the information that was obtained from Christian and social media.
And when he's approaching the camera the first time, what, if anything, do you notice he's holding or carrying?
So through my training and experience, past investigations that I've completed, surveillance that I've been on when I was with the task force, the mannerisms of him as he is walking up to the window are indicative of him possessing a firearm and concealing it in his front jacket pocket.
Sustained.
I actually asked about the first time he was approaching, before he turned around and went back to the vehicle. What, if anything, did you notice in his hand?
He had his cell phone in his hand.
The direction that the vehicle was seen exiting from the gas station, where does that go?
It goes back out on the Buckhorn Road.
Jumping ahead, or switching subjects, did you have an opportunity to review the ring camera footage that Ms. Cordero provided to Investigator Borland?
Yes, I did.
We can take that down now. I'm sorry, Madam Clerk. Thank you. And what, if anything, did you observe about that footage?
I determined that it was on the morning of the 16th, that Friday, and it was not relevant to this investigation.
Did you take any steps to obtain ring footage for the correct time frame?
I did, yes.
And what was that?
Obtained a search warrant from Ring, or to Ring, for the dates of September 16th through September 19th.
And did you obtain any response to your search warrant?
No, they indicated that they were not able to locate responsive records for the identifiers referenced in the legal process, and that no videos were available for the date and time requested.
Jumping ahead again, and Sergeant Goodwin, to October 5th of 2022. On that day, did you receive any information relevant to this investigation?
I did, yes.
What was that?
I had been, since obtaining the juvenile petitions on Mr. Ross, knowing that he had went to Delaware based off of historical phone records, I was in communication with a task force officer with the FBI in Delaware, who was also employed by the Delaware State Police. They had been conducting surveillance on various locations in Delaware known to Issiah, and he informed me that during their investigation for the apprehension, Mr. Ross was taken into custody at his sister's apartment.
And did it take some time for Mr. Ross to get back to North Carolina?
Yes.
About how long?
I want to say sometime around October the 18th, 2022, maybe a couple days before that.
And jumping ahead to that date, the October 18th, did you obtain DNA swabs from Mr. Ross?
I did, yes.
And why did you do that?
I obtained 2 sets of buccal swabs from Mr. Ross for comparison purposes with the evidence that we had collected throughout the case.
And are you trained to conduct or collect such samples?
Yes.
And can you describe for the jury how that works?
So as Investigator Baldwin explained, with any type of collection of evidence, you always put gloves on first. Then you take what appears to be an extended Q-tip with only cotton on one end. You take 2, swab the inside of the right cheek, approximately 7 seconds, and you place it into a rectangular box to be packaged into an evidence envelope. You do the same thing with 2 more additional swabs for the left cheek. Then you do the same, put it in the rectangular box, put it into a evidence envelope, and then seal it.
And did you complete that entire process for Mr. Ross's swabs?
I did, yes.
And what did you do with the items once you collected them?
I submitted them to our evidence technician, Investigator Baldwin.
Could I have just one moment, Your Honor? May I first witness?
Yes, ma'am.
Sergeant Goodwin, I'll show you what I've marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibits 139 and 140, and ask if you recognize these items.
I do, yes.
And how do you recognize them?
It's got my handwriting, it's got my name as the collecting officer, and then when I sealed it on the back, it's got my initials with the date above and below the seal.
And do those appear to be in the same or similar condition as when you sealed them?
They do, yes.
And what is contained within State's Exhibits 139 and 140?
2 buccal swabs from the right cheek and 2 buccal swabs from the left cheek of Mr. Ross.
Your Honor, this time I would move State's Exhibits 139 and 140 into evidence.
No objection, Judge.
States 139 and 140 will be admitted.
Sergeant Goodwin, at some point later in your investigation, did you go with Investigator Baldwin to collect a hair sample from Mr. Ross?
I did, yes.
And why did you do that?
We had received information from the hair expert at the crime lab saying that they had located a hair and needed a comparison from Mr. Ross related to this investigation.
And were you present when that sample was collected?
I was, yes.
Were you present when that sample was packaged by Investigator Baldwin?
Yes, I was.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
I'll show you what I've marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 141 and ask you if you recognize it.
Yes, I do.
And what is State's Exhibit 141?
It is the full-length head hairs that Mr. Ross pulled himself on the execution of a search warrant.
And does that appear to be in the same or similar condition as when you last saw it?
Yes, it was packaged and sealed by Investigator Baldwin.
And was that done in your presence?
Yes, it was.
All right, this time I would move states 141 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
States 141 will be admitted.
And if I could have just one moment, Your Honor. I believe those are all the questions I have for Investigator Baldwin at this, Sergeant Goodwin at this time. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Yes, please. And Sergeant Goodwin, I may call you Investigator, so I apologize.
That's
All right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So you were working on this case starting out September the 18th, 2022. Is that right?
That is correct, yes, sir.
You mentioned you went to the crime scene. You didn't actually locate evidence, but you saw that it had been marked, and you kind of looked around and recognized where they were placed. Is that right?
That's right.
I think you even mentioned that later on in your testimony, when you went to Dexter Clark's house, that you could see the similarity between the bullets that he had in his box at his home, in that bullet box, and the shell casings that were found on scene. Is that right?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And so early on, before you had gotten notifications from the lab or any microscopic comparison, you saw the similarity. Is that right?
I didn't see the similarities from the strike of the primer. I saw the make, caliber that was on the back of the shell casing, where it said 9mm, Remington, RP, whatever those things were.
Right. And I didn't mean to imply that you were able to see what a microscope can see, but you, with your, I guess, training and experience in naked eye, could see that there was a similar kind of color make of the bullets you found on the scene off of Buckhorn Road and the bullets that you found when you left Mr. Clark's house. Is that right?
That is correct.
And how you being that you are a sergeant, you have had a lot of experience shooting firearms. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
With training and testing and qualifying, so on and so forth?
Yes, sir.
And also in your investigations of other homicides and assaults and things like that, you've had a chance to look at different shell casings and placements, so on and so forth. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, you went to Mr. Clark's house, we'll say, was it the 19th or the 20th, shortly thereafter?
No, it was the same night of the bodies being discovered.
All right, so on the 18th.
Correct.
Okay. And at some point, did you make a determination or think or ponder that the shell casings that you found at Buckhorn Road came from Mr. Clark's gun?
It was an assumption that I had, but I couldn't prove one way or the other because we didn't have a firearm.
Right, and you're not a scientist, and there are a lot of other things that are out of place, but that was kind of a working theory, at least at that point.
Correct.
Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the next day on the 19th, you mentioned that you had a meeting with the FBI task force. That was early in the morning of the 19th. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And after that meeting, you then began to, I guess, put together these search warrants for different entities to get more information. Is that right?
Correct.
And one of those was for Snapchat.
That is correct.
And when you made a request for Snapchat, you made a request for both Lyric Snapchat, which you had from her iPad. Is that right?
That's correct.
And for another Snapchat handle who you didn't, at least at that time, know who it belonged to.
That's correct. Yes.
So the identity of the basketball Snapchat handle, was that made after you got your information back from Snapchat, or was that given to you at a later date from another individual? Does that make sense? Okay. Did you understand that that Snapchat for Mr. Basketball, I don't have it right in front of me. When did you identify that that belonged to Devin Clark?
I think it was after several, I can't remember the exact date right offhand, but talking to people, talking to Lyric's family, talking to friends of Devin, I think it was at that point determined like this is his Snapchat account, and so we went with that.
And so when you were going through, eventually you found out that who that Snapchat belonged to. You got the return from Snapchat to get the information that we heard, and we'll talk about that in a second. But then there was a question raised to you about the individual that Devin was talking to, not when he was talking to Lyric, not when he was talking in the group chat, but the longer message. Did you go through the same process to determine who that individual is? And I believe his name, the Snapchat handle was JAHDEEZYYY.
No, I did not.
And did you go through the same methods and channels of talking with Lyric's family or talking to Devin's family and or friends to figure out who this individual is?
I did not, because he indicated on the 16th at 11:23 p.m. that he didn't have any gas, and so knowing that he didn't have gas and then another message being sent at 1:05 a.m., I knew that he wasn't the one that went and picked anybody up.
But in your investigation, just getting a better idea of what was going on that night, if he had had any further conversations with Devin, even after or outside of this, that was never followed up on. Is that right?
I knew there was no other conversations had because Devin was deceased.
Well, there was a span of time of almost 2 hours between one message between Jadizzi and what we've later found out was Devin's, and so there was like 2 hours. So you can't be certain of what isn't there or what conversations they had because they could have talked in a different platform. Is that correct?
That's feasible, but when I got these returns back, the investigation had already gone on for several months. So this wasn't something that I had the 19th or the 20th or the 21st. This is things that I got I'm not going to say a long time. I don't know the exact date of the return, but by that point, I'd already identified Mr. Ross. They were obviously already found deceased, so there was no need, knowing that what we had was what we had, that Mr. Jadizzi wasn't involved.
Okay. All right, but long and short is because your investigation went one direction, you stopped even looking to see who this individual was. Is that
I didn't
correct?
think it was relevant at the time.
Okay. Now, you had a chance to read through some of the messages that were exchanged that night of Friday, September 16th, going into the 17th. I don't know if you still have those messages in front of you. Now, first, you mentioned you got these messages sometime later.
Correct.
But you had access to the messages on Lyric's iPad fairly quickly. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And so from the onset of the investigation, you could see that Lyric was providing direction to this basketball _1296 to come to her residence. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And she was even providing kind of details once he got there as to where to go. I think one of the statements was parked there, almost as if she could see the car pulling up. Is that what you got from that message?
Not exactly. I think the screenshot of the location with the circle is sent, well, all the messages except the very first one is all sent at the same time. So I think it's fair to say that once the screenshot was sent of the location of where to park, I think she was indicating where the circle is to park there.
Okay. But she was giving some kind of identification, park there. But then she goes on further, and we'll talk about timestamps. So the map that we talked about that was circled, that was sent at UTC time, 5/22/31, but Eastern Standard Time, that would be 1/22/31. Is that about right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. But then at 5/22 UTC time, 1/22/38 our time, she went on to say, like, on the side of the road, on that side. So you mentioned these are kind of all coming at the same time, but that's this, all these are kind of streaming within almost a minute of each other. Is that about right?
Yes, sir.
And then she gives further direction about cutting the lights off when they arrive. Is that right?
Yes, sir. That's what I testified to.
Okay. And she even goes further to say, pretty much, keep the lights off until I get into the car.
Correct.
And so early on in this investigation, you could surmise that she was sneaking out and was hoping not to be detected when she got out the house. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you didn't, as you just testified, get the information from Devin's Snapchat until months later, year later?
Without looking at the hard copy, I can't say when I got it. I don't recall any of that.
But it was sometime later after you had already charged Mr. Ross.
That's correct.
But as you are in a case, you're an experienced investigator, you're always kind of looking and seeking for information, looking at details to fit them together. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so once you finally got a chance to get Devin's Snapchat information, you were able to further your idea of what was going on that night. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so based on what you got from Devin's Snapchat, you could see that he was trying to orchestrate a way to meet up with Lyric that night. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And it's your understanding, based on the comments in this Snapchat, that he was looking to meet up with Lyric to have sex with her. Is that right?
Some sort of sexual activity, yes. I can't say for certain that it was sex, but I would say some form of sexual activity.
Well, you had, when you were giving your descriptions of some of this language in here, it sounded like some sexual act. It's not for sure, but you even talked about oral sex as a possible description of what is in this Snapchat. Is that right?
Correct.
And it went as far as saying that she not only wanted to have sex with Devin, but with whoever Devin was with. Is that correct?
Well, at face value, I can't say that that's what she said, but that's what the message that Devin sent to Jadizi said.
That's correct, because we don't have any further communication from Lyric about this interaction. Is that right?
Correct.
And this individual, who we don't know at this time, would have been interested and would have been involved, but from the conversation, he didn't have gas. Now, that could mean he literally didn't have gas in his car, or he didn't have a car to drive. We don't know.
Correct.
And this conversation that Devin was having was carried over from this direct individual to a group chat. And I think there were 11 people in that group chat.
Yes, that's correct.
Were you able to identify who those 11 people were in the group chat?
I did not, no.
You mentioned that in your experience with Snapchat, that messages are deleted or disappeared. Is that correct?
Yes, that's how the app, I guess, works, or that's what they advertise as how it works, is that after a certain amount of time, the content, whether it's a message or a picture, deletes itself and it's no longer there. So sending a search warrant, you're literally sending up a prayer because you don't know what you're going to get. It could be a whole lot or it could be nothing.
But in this instance, there are no search warrants in reference to these other 11 individuals and what conversations were had that night about what was going to happen or had happened.
No, because like I said, this was all obtained months later after Mr. Ross had been charged.
And when you were going through Devin's Snapchat, there was at least one response that you could find that was relevant, talking about you got wheels, free buns.
Yes, I recall reading that.
Okay. And you interpreted that as if you have a ride that you can have sex. How did you interpret that one?
For that particular one, yes, I would say that was offering. He would have been offering, if you have a ride, then I've got someone that will have sex. Yes.
But there was no location information or any other kind of identifying information about who was going to do what from that after that message. Is that right?
Not in the thread that I have. No.
Okay. And you didn't see any other responses from anyone else in that thread that night?
I did not.
Now, after you had a chance to, I guess, seek these search warrants, you then interviewed Mr. Bryant, maybe the following day or something like that, or maybe the same day on the 19th?
I would have interviewed Mr. Bryant on that Tuesday or Wednesday. If you give me a second, I can look at my report if you need it.
Yes, please. Go. Take your time.
So it appears that he come down to the sheriff's office on the 19th.
And your reason for meeting with Mr. Bryant was because you had got information that Mr. Ross was at his home?
That is correct.
And when he came to interview you, obviously this has been a while ago, do you recall his demeanor?
Without going back and looking at the interview, I can't say that he appeared to be calm, just like he was when he testified. I can't say that he was agitated or amped up, if you will.
Okay. And when you met with him, he provided you with information that Mr. Ross was at his house, right?
Correct.
He gave you information that he at one point was dating Mr. Ross's mother, right?
Correct.
He even told you that Mr. Ross lived with him for some time.
Correct.
And he told you that Mr. Ross was asked to leave his mother's home. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay. And he was asked to leave his mother's home by his mother. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And that she asked him, or told him rather, to go stay with his father. Is that right?
Best I can remember, yes.
Okay. Now, after you spoke with Mr. Bryant, did he mention to you that Mr. Ross had left some things behind?
He did, yes, sir.
Okay. And what were those things?
I know it was some type of camouflage bag and a pink sweatshirt that he indicated was Mr. Ross's.
Okay. And were those items taken into evidence?
Yes, sir, they were.
And those items, were they found in the residence of Mr. Bryant? Were they found somewhere else? Like, do you recall where they came from?
Yes, I retrieved them from his vehicle in the parking lot of the sheriff's office after we completed our interview.
Were you made aware of kind of like the interaction at Mr. Bryant's house when his son was in the car?
I was not aware of that interaction until he testified to it last week.
Were you told that a consent search was done of his residence and outside his residence prior to meeting with you?
Yes.
Any idea why those items weren't recovered or presented at that time?
I don't know. That'd be a question he could answer. I wasn't there for the consent search, so I don't know what was there or what wasn't.
Okay. When speaking with Mr. Bryant, he didn't make any mention that he saw any evidence of suspected blood or a firearm or anything like that that would relate to this case.
No, he didn't, but he did bring up that Ms. Cordero made a comment to him when he went over to the house or to the apartment that the booster seat not being in the rear passenger area anymore, that it had been moved to the very back.
Right.
That stood out to me.
Okay. A booster seat not being in the back seat stood out to you because it's uncommon for booster seats to be in the trunk?
No, that just means that, well, as I testified earlier, that the position of the booster seat, I don't just throw things over the back. I usually tend to place things where they belong. And then on top of that, with the Pringle cans, that Pringles were discarded everywhere, and then the Armor All bottle with open lid with wipes, all that. After obtaining that information, is what stood out to me.
Okay. At some point, the vehicle at Ms. Cordero's home, the white GMC Terrain, was taken to the Sally Port.
That's correct.
And you were present when that occurred, right? While it was there being searched.
Yes.
You may not have physically actually seen it driven there by the tow truck, but when you were there, it was prior to the search beginning. Is that fair to say?
It would have arrived prior to the search.
You got there before they actually started the search process.
Yes, because I'm the one that had the search warrant.
Okay. And you mentioned that you saw red spots on maybe the front right passenger of the vehicle that you suspected to be blood.
That's correct.
You also mentioned that you saw some brown stains by the center console. So you're referring to the inside of the car?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And those, did you yourself kind of spot those? Did Investigator Baldwin spot them? Do you recall?
I know we were both looking for items of evidence. I can't recall because there was multiple spots that we observed. I can't say for certain that the one on the passenger side is the one he found and the one on the driver's side is what I found, vice versa. It's just...
But it's your understanding that because you noticed these brown spots that were near the center console, that it was of evidentiary importance and maybe a DNA swab or something was taken from that location?
DNA was taken from there, yes, sir.
Okay. And from your recollection, I know Investigator Baldwin testified to this, the door handles were tested. I think you mentioned there was something seen in the ceiling. That was all tested. Is that correct?
Yes, Investigator Baldwin would have tested or swabbed all of those for testing, yes.
And you mentioned that the Sally Port had to get really dark in order to spray luminol. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. We drove the vehicle outside of the Sally Port to the back side of the jail where it was completely dark. Utilized a tarp to put over top of it so that we wouldn't have any street light or anything like that showing any light.
So it was nighttime when you guys went outside?
That's correct.
And then in addition to it being nighttime, you put a tarp on to make it even darker?
Correct.
And so when the luminol was sprayed, were you also under the tarp in order to see anything illuminate or glow blue?
Yes, to answer your question, yes, I was. I was able to see. And it wasn't like the tarp, we had it draped over, and where we were at, somebody would hold the corner so that we could see underneath. It's not like we were all just underneath the tarp up against the car.
Okay. Another thing you had mentioned was that in the back trunk that there was an open container of Armor All wipes.
That's correct.
Was that taken into evidence?
I don't know. I did not collect any evidence from the vehicle, so I can't say for certain if it was collected or not.
Interestingly enough, when you had filed or submitted your search warrant for the infotainment system, you said that you did not receive any information back. Now, did they decline to agree to this search warrant, or did they just say there was no information?
So the process of obtaining the, I'm going to call it the brains, if you will. I'm no expert in infotainment center extractions. I had the FBI assisting me in that search warrant. And so they removed that computer component from the area of the stereo on the dash, and they took it with them for further examination and realized, well, I was later informed that there was no information that they were able to obtain.
In your experience, I'm assuming you've had infotainment systems removed from vehicles before to gather data.
I personally have not, but I've seen it happen.
Okay. At some point, you got information that maybe this white vehicle had gone to the Petro, which is right off of Buckhorn Road.
Well, I wouldn't say I got information on it. I think that when we have cases of this magnitude where 2 young kids were found shot to death in a rural part of the county, we start from main thoroughfares and work our way back to where gas stations are, if there's any cameras around the area, on houses that we could obtain. The Petro Buckhorn Road is a very, very heavily traveled road. And so we pull video from what we believe to be pertinent timeframes. And obviously after searching the vehicle, seizing the vehicle, and seeing the vehicle on camera, lining it up with the paint transfer from the right front from where we all saw the car hit the concrete post, I think that's why we would have done what we did.
So what you're saying is you would have gotten and requested surveillance video from all the businesses in that area, because there's more than just the Petro right there on Buckhorn.
Correct.
And you mentioned that you could see at that time frame of 2:11 to I think 2:19, you could see the video pull in, and you could see the car kind of sitting there parked next to a gas pump for 30 seconds, maybe a minute or so.
Give or take.
And then eventually that vehicle tries to make a turn around into the next set of gas pumps and doesn't quite make it.
That's correct.
All right. And you could surmise that the person who was driving this car was probably not an experienced driver. Would you say so?
I don't want to assume that Mr. Ross wasn't an experienced driver, because I don't know him. I didn't know him at the time, so I can't say that he is or is not.
Okay. An experienced driver would have judged that turn a little bit better, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the interaction we see Mr. Ross going up to the teller, which looks like they're only doing it from outside.
Correct.
Eventually paying for gas and then leaving.
Correct.
All right. From the video, there was no indication from looking at his clothing that there was any blood or any evidence that he had been involved in any type of assault. Is that correct?
It is, but I think it's also important, based off testimony from the medical examiner, that majority of the shots were from the back. So that appears that the 2 individuals that were discovered deceased were moving away from the shots and not coming forward to create that blowback of the blood coming onto whoever the shooter may have been.
But there wasn't any indication, at least from the medical examiner, that gave us any indication of how anything would have projected. Is that fair to say?
Projected from the victims?
That's correct, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Now, after you got a chance to view this video and after you got a chance to take evidence from this vehicle, I think that's the 19th, the very next day is when you decided to take out charges on Mr. Ross. Is that correct?
20th, yes, sir.
20th. When you were involved in this investigation, did you yourself expand the search and look for things like Devin's cell phone?
I personally did not. I know that there were other investigators that walked street, Buckhorn Road, Yarborough Road, looking for items of evidence, and none were located.
Okay. And so there was, I don't know if you maybe sent out a task of things, Investigator Villa look for this or someone else do that, but was anyone tasked to look for Devin's bag?
It was a culmination of, hey, this is what we have to do. This is what, correction, this is what needs to be done. Who wants to do what?
Okay.
All right, so it wasn't like, I'm going to tell you to do this or tell you to do that. It's, this is what needs to be done. Put your name down and let's go.
Were you ever made aware of how wide the grid was or how far they searched down Buckhorn Road or Yarborough Road to find any of these items?
I was not, but based off the evidence that I was able to review, I know that at some point Devin's phone was at the crime scene and it was not there when we arrived.
Okay. And to your knowledge, no firearm has been recovered either.
That is correct.
And your understanding is that with the divvying of responsibilities, you didn't tell people what to do. Those things would have been responsibilities that people would know was necessary as part of this investigation to look for cell phones, to look for bags, to look for a firearm.
Correct.
And none of those were uncovered up and along Buckhorn Road.
That is correct.
One moment, Judge.
Yes, sir. Mr. Trapp, this might
Yes,
be a
Your
good time just to take our afternoon recess. How's that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, time for our lunch recess. Please remember all the rules. Number one, y'all go to lunch together. That's no problem, but you can't talk about this case with each other. We're not at that point in the trial. Number two, remember you cannot talk to anybody else about this. That includes texting, phone calls, anything, friends, family, anybody at all. Do not allow anybody to speak to you or around you about this case. Remember, if that happens, to let one of the bailiffs know so that I can find out and take care of that problem. 3, please remember no independent research about anything connected with this case, what you've heard, the people present, anything like that. No AI or other wonderful research tools. And lastly, please remember to keep your mind open. You still have not heard all the evidence in this case. You have not heard the arguments of counsel, and you have not heard the law that you have to apply to the facts of this case. So with that, I'm going to ask everybody else to please remain seated. You folks can leave your notepads and things in your chair. See you back here. We'll start at 2.